Where do we even begin to discuss our prison system in the United States? Well, a good place to start is a documentary called The Prison Within. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore, and I am pleased today to have on Katherin Hervey. She is the director of the film The Prison Within, and Troy Williams, who is one of the subjects of the documentary, also happened to work on the doc as a cinematographer, which is not something I've never heard that. But let's launch right into this, Katherin. I want to know what got you involved in this topic. And my own experience, very quickly, I was in Germany for a film festival and happened to visit I was told I was going to go see a screening of a movie at a prison. And when I visited the prison, it felt like a community college. It was completely unlike any prison that I've ever seen in films or seen in documentaries. Why is it here in the United States that we handle our prison system so completely differently than the rest of the world? And how did you get involved in this topic?
I think that's actually a really good lead-in, because I think that one of the reasons that we handle it so differently is because the way that it is portrayed within mass media, within films, within I can't remember the names of them now, and it's probably best, those prison shows where it just seems like everybody is violent, everybody has no conscience, people are throwing feces all over the place, And my experience in prisons with incarcerated people, with formerly incarcerated people, as a college instructor, as a public defender, and also just with people in my own life, really showed me something very, very different, that is not the case. And I want to also say that what I think that what you experienced is not that the prison was the environment of a community college, but what that you felt was a safety with the people in the room, because the prison is still the prison, and it's not a good place to be. It's not a rehabilitative place to be. It is a prison is criminogenic. It creates more crime. But I think what you felt is that the people in the room were like Troy and were like the people depicted in the film.
Well, yeah, in a way that I feel our prison system here is just profit driven. I think that that's a completely wrong approach. And then secondly, the prison in Germany or other prisons, the way that they handle it, at least in Europe, from what I've seen, is it's a commitment to rehabilitation and becoming a productive citizen. What you show in the documentary, and you see, you really capture this program that's at San Quentin. I was unaware, where there's a total commitment to rehabilitating prisoners, to looking at what they have done, acknowledging those wrongs, looking at revisiting aspects of their past and how they got to where they are, and even looking at victims and how they handled what happened to them. Troy, tell me how you got involved in the documentary.
Well, I got involved because I was sort of the resident filmmaker on the inside. And when Katherin came in at a time when many of us in the prison system were very not trusting of outside filmmakers coming in attempting to tell our stories. But Katherin quickly gained a lot of trust from the people inside. Just the heart that she came with, felt that she would be true to what our story was and not put us in the position. A lot of times people in community like to present as though somebody from the outside is coming in to help us become better human beings. And what the community doesn't realize is that these programs were actually started by incarcerated people, right, who reached out to the outside world and asked them to come in to bring them a level of support that they did not have access to or could not have access to from the inside. And so that's very important especially when you're having somebody to come in to help you, like, share your story or get your message to the outside world, that they're true to your message and not true to the sensationalism.
Well, it's interesting, and Katherin, real tribute to your filmmaking skills. You certainly gained the trust of everyone involved in the project. But what I felt was so incredible were during the sessions, where incarcerated individuals were sitting around and telling stories of their background. I mean, it was you see just all the emotional walls completely melt away, and I just thought that was incredibly moving. What went into putting all of this together? I feel that we're, this is something that I feel like we've been blind to, programs like this. And it's was disappointing to learn in your documentary that so few of these programs exist in prisons across the country.
Mm-hmm. What was the question now?
Just like, how did you gain the trust of everyone there and get people like Troy involved, which I think is pretty incredible. But then the level of intimacy you had with the subjects in the documentary, the incarcerated individuals that you basically were given full access to their very personal meetings. I was just really struck with how moving that was. Can you talk about that process?
Yeah. So, I mean, one, like Troy was saying, I was able to gain trust. I've said this before. I feel like when you're in prison and you've really been in prison for a number of years, a long number of years, as everyone in this film was, I really think that you can smell bullshit from the parking lot, because
Exactly.
you're in a,
Exactly.
So, and I had, been in prisons and dealt with these populations, and, my heart was with them. And I think that was very much sensed. And in terms of the filming, what you saw was not contrived whatsoever. I think it was just that they trusted me to film, their most, what was always coming out in those circles, what they're always sharing with each other, that vulnerability. And I think that they saw that is what I wanted. And so I just kind of kept pushing in and towards that. And I did it a lot with, like, I wanted to make a really, really intimate film. So, a lot of times, like, the camera is like right in there. It's right in their faces when they're crying or really expressing something really important, because I really feel like none of this is going to change until, the most kind of conservative lock them up person in there sees that we're dealing with real human beings. And you don't see that in the statistics. You don't see that in the news. You don't see that in the academic articles. It becomes about statistics and this and this and that. And so I wanted to get right up there in the humanity of the situation.
Well, you accomplished that beautifully. I just think, just simple statistic, if someone's in prison, they're not contributing to society. If they're out in the world and paying taxes and working and being a productive citizen, they're, that's, I don't understand why we wouldn't want that as a result. The result should be, hey, let's rehabilitate, let's get people out in the world and working, being productive, pursuing, I don't get, like, that to me is just like, so I don't know if that's a conservative or a liberal view. I really don't care. I just think it's just sort of a humane way of looking at things.
Well, I think that the reason that it's not is because, our prison system, it's like this huge funnel of everything that's wrong with society. It's racism, it's class, it's all the systemic oppressions. And, the people at the top who are making the largest decisions are really the most invested in it. And I think we as a society don't want to look at that. We don't want to really, like, look at ourselves and dive deep into ourselves with truth and reconciliation. And so until we're able to do that, it just kind of keeps going and going, unfortunately.
Yeah. Troy, can you talk about, talk about your own experience being involved in the film, and then also what you experienced as well, on the inside?
One of the biggest things that come to my mind right now is just when we're talking about the prison system. I have a friend who's been incarcerated for 34 years, and just he received a parole date. And when you receive a parole date, being sentenced to life with the possibility in California, you have to appear before a panel which consists of a commissioner and deputy commissioner, which assesses whether or not they consider you a current threat. After he received the date, they said he was no longer a threat to society. It has to go before there's 120 days in which the governor gets to challenge that or ask for a reversal. The short story is that they asked for a reversal of a man who's been locked up for 34 years. And so that brings me to my point is that oftentimes 34, 40 years, in many cases, a person is still being held based upon what he did when he was 20, what he did when he was 17 years old. And we're holding people who are not the same 22-year-old. They may not have the vocabulary to express their transformation or express their change in the way that you see many people do in the film, but they're not the same person. And so we continue to penalize people as though they're a current threat, and we're actually holding people who, although their communication may not be effective with people on a board level, their communication with community and with the streets is very effective. And my light just went out. I apologize, but
that's okay. We can see you perfectly. It's good.
And they're very effective. And so we're holding people who are actually assets to the community that could come out here and work. I myself had, laws not changed or things not changed, I probably wouldn't be home. And all the people and working with, being a part of this film, and being able to encourage change from this side of the wall that would not be happening had somebody just to look at who I was when I committed my crime in my 20s.
Another story that is a through line through the documentary is a woman whose husband was a police officer who was killed, and she sought the death penalty for the person who committed that crime. And it's an incredible moment in the documentary where she discusses that when he received the death penalty, there was no, her feelings didn't change. She didn't feel better because of it. I feel that while I'm not particularly religious, I do believe that there are many religious values that are universal, and forgiveness is one of them. And she had an opportunity to have interaction with the person who killed her, who was responsible for the death of her husband. It's an incredible, it's one of the threads that you follow in the documentary, but it really showed, I really do appreciate that you showed the victim side of it, and that this is not, the death penalty is not that's not gonna bring her husband back. That's not gonna, it's not the solve, right? For that.
Right.
Can you tell me, in dealing with her and her journey, you really track that throughout the film. So what I appreciate about your documentary is balancing so many sides of the equation. It's very complex.
Right. Well, I appreciate that, because that's the thing, is that it is an extremely complex situation with so many nuances, and it just keeps getting simplified, and it's black and white, and it's this and that. And so that was a super important element, is that we had to show, quote unquote, victim survivors. And I want to say that with the caveat that, the men inside are also victims and survivors, right? Their journey has just been different because they've had different sets of traumas or come from different communities or whatever. And so really what I wanted to show is her journey of healing and transformation parallel to the men inside. and that in showing it that what we see is, trauma is trauma, and we all have to connect the dots of our trauma in order to come to healing and to forgiveness, because the men have to forgive themselves as well. And I think that that's also something that's not really even looked at or acknowledged. There's this beautiful scene in the film where Sane is like really, really deeply living his accountability for the crime that he committed, for the life that he took. And I mean, that's huge. It's a huge burden to live with for your entire life, and I'll also just say this is, it was really Jamie, who's also a victim in the film, that really kind of led me into Vogue, because I read this article where she stated that after all the years of her trauma, before she went into the prison to heal with other men who had committed violence, that she was realizing that she'd experienced so much trauma that she was almost, that she saw herself as being just the same as the men who had committed violence to her, because she saw how unhealed she was, right? How much anger she had, how much violence that she had within her from that unhealed trauma. So, my goal is for people to see them as being parallel to each other, that we're really not that different, except for our circumstances.
Well, I'm not only struck with the intimacy of the documentary, the fact that so many sides of this discussion are represented, but it really, I feel like there's really a call to action on seeing this film. As we wrap up the podcast, can you tell me where can people go to get more information, follow the project? Because I feel like this is probably the beginning of more documentaries of this type to take a serious look at this issue.
Yes, so we have a website, theprisonwithin.org. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram page. We have a Twitter feed, Prison Within Doc, I believe it is. And we're also, we've been acquired for North American distribution. So soon we're going to be out for a purchase on Amazon and iTunes and a bunch of other streaming channels and networks as well. And we pretty much, we put everything up on Facebook and Instagram. All the announcements are there and on the website. So if you follow that, you can keep up with it.
I guess the simple answer is just Google The Prison Within. I think
just Google The Prison Within.
That's the way to discover it. Well, I want to thank you both, Troy and Katherin, for this remarkable documentary. I want to thank you for your bravery in doing it. It's just incredible. And, for years I would see so many documentaries about marijuana and the legalization of marijuana. And I truly believe that a barrage of documentaries on that topic actually moved the needle. And I believe we need more documentaries about the problems in our justice system and our prison system. And I think the more that we see, the more that come at this issue from all types of angles, that the documentary films on this topic are going to lead to real change. So I want to thank you both for being on the Film Threat podcast. I also want to, thank you. And I want to thank our sponsor, Storyblocks. If you go to storyblocks.com/filmthreat, and you want to be a filmmaker, like the ones that we talked to here on the show, there are all sorts of tools there for filmmakers, all types of tools, stock footage. So I want to thank Storyblocks for making it possible for me to talk to you today. It's a fantastic documentary. I've never seen the topic covered quite this way, which is why I think it's so remarkable. So I thank you both, and I hope you continue to fight, and I hope there's more to come. So thank you very much.
There is more to come, and have no doubt we will be in the fight.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Absolutely.
Great.
Bye-bye.